Assalamu everyone. This is Huzaifah Ahmed from Rehan School Korangi campus. Today I'm here with another topic for discussion with ChatGPT, which is how to make better discussions and avoid regret. I feel like many teenagers can relate with this topic. They face problems while making discussions. So let's start. Hey ChatGPT. Today the topic of discussion with you is how to make better decisions and avoid regret.
That's a really great topic. I mean, we all face big and small decisions every day, and sometimes it's hard to avoid that what if feeling later on. What kind of decisions are you thinking about? Like personal, career, or even smaller daily choices?
Firstly, let's talk about what basically is a decision and what makes a decision good. Is it the outcome, the process, or both combined?
Ooh, that's a great question. At its core, a decision is just a conscious choice between different options. But what makes a good decision is often a mix. Both the process and the outcome matter. If you make a decision with a thoughtful, well informed process, even if the outcome isn't perfect, you can still call it good. On the flip side, a perfect outcome doesn't guarantee it was a good decision if it was just pure luck. So it's really that combination thoughtfulness in the process plus a solid outcome.
Why do humans naturally make irrational decisions even when they know they can do better?
Yeah, that's really common. Our brains are wired with all these shortcuts, cognitive biases, emotions, and social influences that push us off the rational track. Plus, we often prioritize short term rewards or emotional comfort over long term reasoning. So, even with good intentions, we just kind of stumble into irrational choices sometimes.
All right, now tell me, what does behavioral science say about the biggest cognitive biases that distort our decisions?
Behavioral science highlights some major cognitive biases that distort our decisions. These include anchoring bias, where we latch onto the first piece of info, confirmation bias, where we seek evidence that supports our beliefs, the availability heuristic, where we judge likelihood by what's most memorable, loss aversion, where we fear losses more than we value gains, and overconfidence, where we overestimate what we know. These biases arise from mental shortcuts we use to make quick decisions, even when they lead us astray.
Which one of these biases you think is the most important one and affects mostly to our decisions?
Oof, that's a tough call because it really depends on the situation. But I think confirmation bias is often one of the most pervasive. We naturally filter information to fit what we already believe, so it sneaks into all kinds of decisions, from big life choices to small daily ones. Once we catch ourselves in that loop, we can start breaking free a bit more easily.
All right, now how does emotion affect decision making? Should you trust your gut or ignore it completely?
Yeah, emotions have a huge impact. Sometimes they give us really valuable intuition, especially if we're making quick calls based on experience, but they can also lead us astray if we're just reacting out of fear or excitement. So it's not about ignoring your gut entirely, but balancing it with reason, like pausing when checking facts and staying aware of how you're feeling.
Now, what's the difference between overthinking a decision and giving it the thought it deserves? I've seen many teenagers and students overthinking a decision and end up with not a really good one. So, how do they overcome that?
Yeah, that's a really fine line. Giving a decision the thought it deserves means you're intentionally gathering the right info, weighing options, and setting aside time to reflect. Overthinking, though, is when you just get stuck in a loop, replaying worst case scenarios or second guessing endlessly. One way to overcome it is setting a time limit for how long you'll deliberate. And once that time's up, just choose, trusting that you've done enough groundwork.
Okay, now how does the fear of regret influence the choices we make, and does it help or hurt us anyway?
Yeah, fear of regret is super powerful. It can push us to play it safe, avoid risks, and stick to what's comfortable. So, in that sense, it can hurt us by keeping us from big, meaningful leaps. But it can also be a guide. When we reflect on what we might regret, it helps us clarify what really matters. So, it's all about balance, using that fear to guide you, but not letting it paralyze you.
Okay, what frameworks or mental models do the best decision makers in the world actually use that we average persons don't know about of?
Top decision makers often use mental models like first principles thinking, where they break a problem down to its core truths, and second order thinking, which considers the ripple effects of a cause. They also rely on frameworks like inversion, asking how they could fail, and the regret minimization model, where they imagine the long term regret of a decision. By using these frameworks, they clarify choices and spot hidden risks.
How do you make good decisions under pressure, especially when time is limited and stakes are high?
Yeah, that can be really tough. The key is to have a go to process that you trust. So, one approach is narrowing down just a few critical factors. Focus on the most important info, set aside distractions, and even just take a deep breath to calm your nervous system. And if you can, make smaller, reversible decisions first. You don't have to solve everything at once, just take the next best step.
Why don't you explain it with some examples so it's more easier to understand what you just stated up there?
Absolutely. So, imagine you're a student deciding whether to accept a new job offer, but you only have a day to decide. Instead of getting stuck in endless pros and cons, you might focus on two key factors: salary and long term growth. You set a time limit, maybe 3 hours, so you don't spiral. Then you take a deep breath, evaluate those two factors, and make a decision. Another example might be if a CEO is choosing a strategy under time pressure. They might just focus on the single biggest risk, mitigating that, and then trust their team to adapt afterward. So it's really about narrowing your focus and giving yourself a structured approach.
All right. What's the role of past experience in decision making? Does it help or create some blind spots that end up being dangerous for us?
Yeah, it's a double edged sword. Past experience is super valuable because it gives you a kind of intuition. You can spot patterns quickly and avoid previous mistakes. But the downside is if you rely too much on past success, you can miss new variables, or you might assume things will always be the same. So it's about using that experience, but staying curious and open to new data every time.
So the key is just balancing between the two things, right?
Exactly. It's all about balance. Lean on your past insights for guidance, but stay flexible. Question assumptions, gather fresh info, and be willing to adjust. That way, you get the benefit of experience without getting stuck in old patterns.
Okay. How do you make peace with a bad decision you've already made and move forward without regret and overthinking about it, of course?
Yeah, that's really tough, but it is possible. First, acknowledge the decision without beating yourself up. Just recognize it was the best you could do with what you knew at the time. Then focus on what you can control now. Learn from it, take one small positive step forward, and remind yourself that every decision is a chance to grow. Over time, those steps help you let go of the past and stay present.
Okay, explain it in detail because I think it's the topic with which every boy can relate to.
Yeah, of course. So when you realize you've made a bad decision, first give yourself some compassion. It's really easy to get stuck in a loop of guilt, but remember you didn't have all the answers back then. You did your best. After that, consciously reflect on what went wrong, but don't dwell. Just write down a lesson you can take with you. Then focus on the next right step. Small intentional actions, even if they feel tiny, keep you moving forward.
Okay, so note taking and journaling is the best way to overcome that regret feeling.
Yeah, exactly. By writing things down, you give yourself a bit of distance from the emotion. You get to see your thoughts more clearly, recognize patterns, and track progress over time. And that act of putting it on paper, it helps you process the experience. So the regret doesn't keep looping. It just becomes a lesson you carry forward.
Okay, now lastly, what's one decision making habit someone can build today to consistently make better choices and also add some code or something for the cherry on top?
I love that. One really powerful habit is building a pause and question routine. So before you decide, just take a moment to ask yourself a few structured questions. What is the goal here? What assumptions am I making? What's the worst case scenario? And if you want a little cherry on top, you can even code a simple reminder in a calendar or a script. For example, in Python, you could set a daily reminder with a small question prompt like, what's one decision I can reflect on today? That tiny daily habit keeps you tuned in, and over time, you build a muscle for more intentional choices.
All right, everyone. I like today's discussion with ChatGPT a lot, and now it's time to end it. So until the next recording, Allah Hafiz.